Hi, Rebecca. I am so happy and excited to connect to you today. Thank you so much for being here. Wow, I have been following you for a while, and to really be here and do this with you, it's just so exciting. Welcome.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. It's really nice to be here. I'm excited to chat with you today.
Yes, and this is such a beautiful topic, honestly, because I think right now there is a segment which is kind of like really awakening to the gut brain connection, and there's a segment which is really awakening to their bodies, to their health. And I think this is one topic which in my opinion kind of is bridging the two segments so amazingly. So first of all, love all your work. Thanks for sharing your medicine. Thanks for sharing your work. It's just so wonderful to see people actually share their work and it being accepted and loved on such a scale. It's truly an inspiration, I think, for anyone and everyone out there who knows there is something which has healed them and there's something that they have to offer to the world. So my first question from you would definitely be would be like, how did it all start? Like, how did gut healing, this topic, this medicine first came to you before it made its way to the world?
Yeah, so I mean, I think a lot of these stories they start with a challenge. So I think I grew up in India, a little bit background. My family is from the United States, but my parents moved to India in 1992, and we grew up in the Himalayas, so in a small town called Missouri, living a very kind of like rustic life where, if we had bread, we would make it from scratch. If we were cooking in the kitchen, everything was, from the local market. And so we lived, we ate a very healthy diet, and my gut issues started when I went to college, so to university in the United States, and which is a very like wheat based diet. And for us growing up in India, my mom was not actually, she was not super interested in making bread or like making chapatis or anything. Like she thought that was like, she thought Indian women were like so hardcore, because she was like, I would never roll out that many chapatis. And so we just ate a lot of rice growing up. So I think unintentionally we were sort of on this like low gluten kind of diet. um and even in my teenage years, like I started having some, I would say, more like mental food issues, like I think as a teenage girl, body image issues, and then in connection with food as well. I think some of those issues started even as a teenager in high school, trying to be skinny, trying to be fashionable, all of those things that now feel so stupid to me at the time were so, so important. And so I think I started having a challenging relationship with food in high school. But then when I went to college in the United States, I switched to essentially what was a wheat-based diet. Like the Western diet is very, very heavy in bread. It's like pancakes, wheat, bread, pizza, a lot of these, wheat-based things, a lot of cakes, a lot of scones, a lot of muffins, and started like having severe gut troubles. And, that in addition to sort of this like insecurity with food and with my body, kind of is what sort of pushed me onto this journey of being very interested in, I think I was experiencing multiple layers of dysfunction with like food and with my body. So, some of it was, that I'm eating food and I'm not feeling great on a daily basis. I'm really not feeling good. And then I'm also not, maybe wasn't happy with the way, when I started college, they always say that you gain that freshman 15, well, I really did gain the freshman 15, and I felt awful because none of my clothes would fit. I think that's the worst part, actually, is just having to go out and buy new clothes. Um, and so I think that's just sort of what launched me onto this journey of, like understanding and wanting to have a deeper connection with food and with my body, and just wanting to feel good and be at peace in my own skin.
Thank you for sharing that beautiful. I think it's just so unique. I think, first of all, for you to be from the United States and to have your childhood in India and to have this very unconventional culture growing up, and this, be it your
Mm,
food and your environment and all of that stuff. Like, and I love that part where you said how the Western diet is mostly wheat based, and I think that's what of late in India, we have been really kind of like our diets are really shifting towards that. I think breads,
mm,
pizza, burgers, pancakes. Oh, it's like we're just shifting so much towards grains and
mm,
more towards grain, even though our technically our traditional diets have like a balanced all kind of foods, but uh,
mm,
of late most of I think anybody who is in their 20s or in the teenage years or I think even in their 30s, our conventional diets have become very westernized for that matter.
mm, mm.
So really it was beautiful to kind of like know where you're coming from and how. I'm really interested, kind of like excited to know how did it that journey led you to. Did you kind of like get more books? Did you kind of like find more teachers, workshops? Like that's my kind of like way of going all in. How was it for you?
Yeah, so I mean, I'm an avid researcher for sure. Both of my parents are academics, they both have PhDs. And so I love reading books. I think that's definitely one of my favorite ways to attain knowledge. And so it did, like it started with, and when I was in university, I was actually appalled by the lack of nutrition books in my college's library because there weren't that many, and I read every single one of them when I was in college, and then started buying more books, learning more. So it was a lot of books, definitely. Is how I started, just kind of like learning about different approaches to nutrition, different diets, different doctors, and their philosophies on food as medicine. Um, and then also like some psychological things too, so examining that like relationship that women have with food and with their bodies, and how some of that is cultural, some of that is psychological. Um, and I think for me, it was maybe because I grew up in multiple cultures, I just kind of felt a little lost in that area, and so I was very eager to just kind of learn more about it overall. And then when I was so a couple of years after university, I was living in a small town in China, in the Tibetan area, like the Tibetan region of China, and I had some friends some like women who were sort of in this group of exercising together, and we would meet every morning and we would exercise together. And I loved it because I've always been very active and I was always an athlete in school and stuff like that. But at one point in that group, um, the women decided that they wanted to do like a anti-inflammatory diet together. So they wanted to sort of like join together and all do this diet at once. And that was sort of for me like the beginning of like really coming to peace in my body with food. And I think a big part of it was like doing it in a community of women. We were still meeting each other every day. We would send we would WhatsApp each other photos of everything we ate. So um there was there was this accountability of like, okay, I have to make a nice meal because I have to show it to everyone. But there was also all of this encouragement. If you're like, okay, well, like I can't eat gluten, I can't eat sugar, what am I going to make? Suddenly you get all these photos of what everyone else has made for dinner, and you're like, oh, okay, this is a great idea, I'm going to try this. Or oh, that looks so cool, I'll try it tomorrow for dinner, or things like that. So um plus just I think the support of doing this together for me was just very, very helpful. And in terms of not only maybe sticking to the program or experiencing that physical transformation, but also I think like in terms of just like being able to emotionally handle it, socially handle it. Eating is a very social thing. And I remember, I was terrified during this program to go to somebody's house for lunch, and then so I just kind of canceled all of my plans. I was just like, I'm not in town, even though I was in town. Um, and then I remember one of the other women on the group, she was messaging, and she was like, listen, like I'm supposed to meet this lady tomorrow, and I know she always bakes for me when I come, and I don't know what to do. Like I have to meet her tomorrow. But like I don't want to eat, like I'm not going to eat whatever she bakes, and so then all of the other women were sort of like chiming in with their advice, and they're like, why don't you message her before, tell her how much you value her, but like, you're doing this cleanse, so you don't want to have anything that contains any of these ingredients, but you're really looking forward to seeing her. Just things like that sort of helped with I think for me, one, it helped me like normalize like eating clean and eating healthy, because I would struggle with like maybe I'd be eat really healthy at home, but then I'd go out with someone and then I'd be like, okay, like you want to have pizza, I'll have pizza, and then I would feel awful about it later, because like that's not something that suited my body or gave me good energy or made me feel good. So yeah, it was very helpful to sort of like have a group of women that I could kind of talk to and sort of like feed off of and feel encouraged by. And
Mm.
that's how I really started to like learn how to eat in a way that was very nourishing to me.
I think that's just so relatable for, I think, not just me, I'm sure a lot of people listening, because I think specifically in a lot of like regional countries, food is a way how we connect. Food is a way how our grandmoms show their love. And food is kind of like, it has memory, that the taste, it's like a single kind of like a taste of a fruit or food can really take us to a childhood. That's the essence and the power of food, I think. And so, yes, that's, I think, just so powerful how you brought in the idea of having healthy boundaries, of actually women
Hmm.
supporting each other into uh, kind of like conveying your message in a more loving, graceful kind of way. Because I think this is something
Hmm.
which a lot of us kind of struggle with, because we feel kind of like pressured to and I think it can play out in two different ways. One, we want to fit in, so we would sometimes really really cross our own boundaries and actually do things which we would probably wouldn't do otherwise, but we just want to fit in, we want to please people. That kind of like really kind of comes in on board. And on the other side, it's also like we're unable to communicate our boundaries, we're unable to communicate why are we doing this. And I think when I say that, what's really like kind of like clicking in our mind is like, maybe a lot of times we're not able to speak that so clearly is because even we are not very sure 100% sure why are we doing this. A
Hmm.
lot of times perhaps our goals are very scattered, perhaps we have not got so deep with to why are we following a particular diet, or are we doing it because
Hmm.
it's trend, are we doing it because it's everybody's doing it and it's cool right now, or are we doing it because we just want to lose some instant weight for the wedding. Like, what's our why behind? And that's something I kind of like get a lot, because and I really want to get with you on board with it about the mindset. So
Hmm.
yes, what have you kind of like gathered throughout your journey uh, about actually having food as like really rethinking the concept of food, not just as
Hmm.
something we do to just celebrate, not just to do something to just satisfy your emotional urges or to kind of like crave that sugar craving, multiple stuff. How has your way of thinking really shifted, and how has that kind of helped you to actually make a real substantial shift in the way you eat, the way you live, and perhaps actually for you even the way you share this knowledge, this
Hmm.
understanding with other people?
Yeah, I mean, I think, food it's a very complicated thing, because especially in India, food is very, very cultural. And I've grown up here, so I know what it's like to go to someone's house and eat way more than you ever intended to eat, like, um, or, what it's like to feel pressured to eat or feel like you have to. And I know all about that because I did grow up here, and I know, we would go when we were growing up. I remember honestly, like, avoiding going to meals with, like, when I was a teenager and I was, trying to be very thin, and like, I'd avoid going out with my parents to their friends' houses because I was like, they're gonna force me to eat, and I don't want to. And so, it is very challenging here in this culture. And I think, but I think something that's really important to realize is that, food is a medium for love, right? Like here, I think, people show their love through food. And while that's really special and it's really beautiful, the love is still there, even if the food isn't. And so I think it's really important to be able to distinctify that, and to be able to, to know that, and to be able to talk about it as well. I think, like, for a lot of people, there's it's hard to articulate to other people that you're not going to eat something, or why you're not going to eat something. But I think if you do, it actually, one, it makes you articulate it to yourself, right? It makes you get to the root of why you're doing something. um, and if you can articulate that to others, then you're much more likely to be able to, like, stick to it. And it also helps us deal with, I think, as women, we have a lot of shame around our bodies, and we have a lot of shame around food and our bodies. And so the reason why, a lot of people get pressured into eating, or they get pressured into um, doing certain things, or they're unable to stand up for themselves, is because of that intrinsic shame, where people feel like, okay, I know that I'm supposed to be gluten free right now, but I don't want to talk about it with this person, or I don't want people to know that because that's a secret, and I'm, like, maybe ashamed of why I even have to be gluten free. Maybe I feel like there's just something bad about my body, or whatever it is. Um, and so I think, being able to articulate it first helps you deal with that, because, at the end of the day, if you go to your auntie's house, or whoever it is, and she's feeding you parathas that are making you feel sick, and if or are just making your body look in a way that you don't want it to look, I think if you could be open and honest with her about that, she would be happy to, feed you something else, feed you a cucumber salad, or whatever it is, or just have a cup of tea with you, right? And not necessarily eat at all. Because nobody really wants you to, like, I think I had so many instances where I would leave somebody's home feeling like really sick, and be like, I don't think that they want that, like, they meant to show love to me, but here I am, like, allowing that to turn into destruction in my body. It's still a challenge because not everyone will understand, and I think that's something that you just have to accept, is like, there are going to be people out there who just think, eating healthy is a trend, or it's a farce, and those people, they're entitled to their opinions, and that's perfectly fine. But it's important to be able to know what works for your body, and to be able to stick to that, because, at the end of the day, what you put in your body, it's like one of the most personal things that you do. I mean, it's you're literally putting things into your own body, that are then, being digested, being turned into energy. And you want those things to be things that are truly giving you energy and not draining you of energy. Like, think about a meal that you've had where you felt like completely exhausted and like bloated and tired afterwards. That is not the purpose of food. And the purpose of food is to energize us and to give us life. And
Mhm.
so if on an individual level, if the food that you're eating, or if the food that I'm eating is not doing that, I think it's really important to examine that and to figure out why, and to gain an understanding of, how to change that. So how to intuitively start to learn about what foods suit you personally, and which foods don't, and then to be able to articulate that, so to easily just be able to say, well, actually, thank you so much for this, but this actually just doesn't suit my body. My body just can't digest it, so I don't want to have that right now, thank you. So to be able to actually say that to someone and to be comfortable with that is so important, and such an act of self-love, right? Because you're creating that
Absolutely.
boundary around yourself, and and what I found is, like, I'm someone who I was like, I'm pretty agreeable. I don't like to make a big fuss around myself. That's my personality. So it was very challenging for me to create some of these boundaries, especially with people I didn't know very well. But even with people I did know very well, like I remember when I started eating differently, and then I went to visit my sister and she was like, "Oh, I made you all of this cake," and I was like, I'm not gonna have that, and she was like mad at me because she was like, well, I went through all this effort for you and you're not having it. So sometimes it's hardest, with the people who are closest to you. But I think the more you articulate it, the less you can avoid these awkward situations.
And I love how do you kind of like you put it as an act of self-love. And I think when we can have these honest conversations and these honest whys and these ideas around why am I doing this, or what is the reason why I'm doing this, and that's because I really care about my body, or this is how it's going to impact my energy, or this is how it's going to impact how I feel in my body, in my mind also. I think that's
Mm,
where once we get honest with ourselves, we can get really honest with others too. So I absolutely love
mm.
that kind of like place. uh, I would love to know, how did the journey of discovering kombucha come into your life so much that you are now selling kombuchas in a place which has been, like, I think in India it's still really new. It's still something which, I'll be honest, a lot of people are in the mainstream still very hesitant about it. Like, okay, what's that?
Hmm.
So
Yeah.
how did that pan out? How did that come into your life? And how did you feel that really that call to kind of like really take it into serious consideration, not just for yourself, but for other people as well?
Yeah, so I discovered kombucha in my first year of university. And like, incidentally, that was when I was having a lot of gut troubles, and really struggling with my gut. And I, and it was before kombucha really became popular in the United States too. So it was sort of this like, unusual kind of like healthy thing there as well. So kind of like, I would say at that point in time, kombucha was even less recognized than it is in India right now, or maybe around the same. It was, it was very out there. And I had some friends who maybe had tried it or knew about it. And I was very much, in kind of like, I was researching about food, and I was, sort of talking with people who were really into that kind of thing. And so I remember I went to the organic food store and I picked up a bottle of kombucha. And I was like a completely like broke college student. Like, I literally didn't have any money. And so it was like $3.50, which felt like a lot. I was like, it really felt like a lot. Um, and so, I bought it and I drank it, and immediately I like started to feel lighter, and my digestion kind of sped up. I think I like went to the washroom soon after, and just kind of like my whole body like cleared out. And I felt like instantly I just felt better. Um and I think that was sort of the beginning of my like love affair with kombucha. It took me, from that moment, it took me a couple of months before I could find a culture to make it myself. But I knew I had to make it myself because it was so expensive. I wasn't going to be able to afford to buy it. And so in I think one year I had a friend who was making it. Actually, had this new girl joined our college, and she had actually worked at a kombucha factory. So she had been like a professional kombucha brewer. And I was like, please teach me. And so she taught me how to make kombucha. She, helped me buy everything, gave me my first cultures, helped me make the tea, brew it. She would come over every day and sort of like check on it with me and show me like what it looked like and what it should taste like and that sort of thing. And then after that, I just I was a kombucha maker. I always had these jars of fermenting kombucha in my college dorm room. And I would share it around with people, but mostly I would just consume it for myself. I didn't really think of it at that time. I didn't really think of it as like a beverage. It was just kind of like my little secret, like gut tonic that I made for myself. I didn't flavor it with fruit or anything. I would just drink it like unflavored kombucha. So that was the first 5-6 years of consuming kombucha. It was just for myself. It wasn't something I ever thought I would share with anyone. Yeah.
Yeah, I love that. And I think most of the things which kind of like uh, we work for ourselves, we do it for ourselves, we do it for our own healing. And that kind of like has a whole different energy to it when you kind of like
Mm,
go out and talk about it and share with the world, because you are
mm,
literally your own uh, first experiment ever.
mm. Yeah,
And
absolutely. I mean, I do feel that way with so many of the things that we do, is that
yeah.
I am like the first experiment.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. It's like we end up becoming the rats for that matter, to kind of like know
Mm,
that this is something that we are not just selling. This is not something that we are just doing from a place to make money or doing from a place to commercialize it, but it's something that we know in our bones that it has healed us, it's helped us. When I think for you,
mm,
perhaps nothing else would have in this way.
mm. Yeah.
So, yeah, how did it come all the way from the US to India? And how did atmosphere both through you?
Yeah, so I mean, I was making kombucha throughout my travels. So I lived in China for a while. I would make kombucha there. Um, and then when I moved back to India in 2015, 16, 15, I moved back to India 2015. And then that's when I kind of realized like nobody's really making kombucha here. And I visited a kombucha brewery, like an actual factory in Bali, and started to get an understanding of how to make kombucha on a commercial level in a professional way. And when I moved back to India, I think the first thing was I just kind of noticed like, okay, there's no kombucha in India yet. Um, and I started kind of like thinking about it. Essentially in the beginning, it was just sort of like, yeah, maybe we could sell kombucha, but no one was really sure if Indians would really take to it.
Mhm.
Um, but in 2016, my sister and we moved to Delhi and we started living here in the city. Before that, I was in Missouri in the mountains with my family. And then we were both working corporate jobs. I was working with FabIndia. She was working with Organic India. But we were making kombucha and we started sharing it with our friends. That's how it started. And they really liked it. We had people coming back wanting more and more. My sister was working as a nutritionist and she would have clients who had like a probiotic need, a probiotic deficiency. And
Mm.
there was not really anything she felt like she could prescribe to them, especially if they were someone who like dairy wouldn't suit them, because your main source of probiotics in India is from dahi. But so she started giving it to her clients as well, and that's really how it started to become a business. Was when she started giving it to her clients, and then we started serving it in restaurants and started packaging it and put it into stores. And we did our first event in 2018 at Select City Walk. We rented a little stall, and I remember, like when we set up our stall, we literally didn't have like anything. Like we didn't have a logo, we didn't have any like branding, and we kind of just like brought our bottles, and set them up on the table. And the organizers were like, "What are you doing? Like this looks terrible." And so I like called my sister and I was like, quick, buy as many flowers as you can, and we just kind of like, and I was like, bring a white sheet, and so we just sort of covered the table with a white sheet and sprinkled flowers everywhere. And that was our first ever stall, but we sold all of the kombucha that we brought. We completely sold out at that market.
Mm.
We sold kombucha to people who didn't even know what it was, and that's when we realized that there was a big business opportunity.
Yeah, it's just so juicy and so exciting, honestly. I love how ideas come into form. I love a story like that. Uh, so, in your opinion, even though you felt like you were hesitant as to how it will be received, slow and steady, it kind of like made sense as to uh, it doesn't matter what region, what culture you kind of like come to. Everybody is kind of open to a healthier lifestyle, a healthier body, a healthier gut. So, with
Yeah.
having like so many people kind of like getting converted into kombucha drinkers. And I know a lot of people also use kombucha as an alternative to those to drinks, to alcohol, as a beverage alternative.
Yeah.
So yes, how do you think, like, apart from its healing what do you say, attributes, what have you particularly noticed in women specifically? Because I see a lot of your posts talking about hormonal health and the relationship between your gut and your hormones. So how do you think kind of like probiotics and all of this really play a role in the way we really operate in our day-to-day lives, our energy levels, in our moods? um how does it all play out?
Yeah, so I mean, the gut is essentially, it's like the engine of your body, right? Like it's where you digest food, it's where you take in energy from your food. Um, a healthy gut is a healthy you. It really is, and there's a huge connection, a lot of research being done, with your gut health in relation to your skin, your gut health in relation to your mental health, your gut health in relation to your hormones. But, without going deep into the specific scienciness of it, um, if you have a well functioning gut, you're going to have a faster metabolism. You're going to have more balanced hormones. You're going to be more nourished because you're going to be able to extract more vitamins and nutrients from the food that you're consuming. And you're going to have more balanced body weight. An unhealthy gut, is going to be very stressful for your body, because you'll be malnourished even if you're consuming a lot of food. You might still be malnourished. You'll be storing things as fat that don't need to be stored as fat. Your metabolism will slow down, which will cause toxicity in the body. It will cause weight gain. It'll cause thyroid disorders. It'll um and then like if your gut is stressed, your body is going to be releasing things like more cortisol and more insulin, which are hormones that we use to manage stress or to manage a large sugar intake. And then your body's not going to have the energy to create things like progesterone or some of those lovely like feminine hormones that we need in order to feel calm and safe and happy. We might be producing the wrong kinds of estrogen. And so if your gut is unhealthy, all of these things can kind of like spill out of that. And a lot of times, actually, if someone has a hormonal imbalance, the first thing they need to do is heal their gut. And 80-90% of the time, healing your gut will actually fix that hormonal imbalance on its own. There might be a little bit of tweaking here and there, maybe some herbs that can help or some lifestyle practices. But healing the gut is so, so important. And when it comes to bacteria and probiotics, like we have more bacterial cells in our gut that are foreign bacteria, so essentially probiotics or bad bacteria, which live in our large intestine, than we do cells in our body. So we have more bacteria in our body than we have you cells in your body, So bacteria are huge. They're a big part of what's affecting the way that you feel. They're a big part of how your body's functioning. And you want to make sure that that bacteria that you have in your body is bacteria that's good bacteria, that's working for you, that's making you healthier, and not bad bacteria that's kind of slowing you down and making you unhealthier. So the gut really is, I think a lot of doctors and scientists are realizing it more and more every year, that, and but it was also something that, like, you have, like, all disease begins in the gut is one of the oldest medical sayings that has been a part of human history, right? So it's something that we've always known, but it's something that I think we're relearning now as well.
And not just, I think, diseases in body, but also there's such a deeper connection with how our guts react to when there is trauma in our body, when there is
Mm,
emotional suppression and emotional pain in our bodies, when because I'm just so, it's just such an insightful topic, honestly, for me, because I'm still diving so deep into the beautiful relationship between trauma healing and gut healing. Like, that's something
mm,
which is just such an exciting topic, because I've really not heard a lot of people talking about it
yeah,
until probably a year or two ago. And I loved how
yeah.
you said about how it actually, most of us, I think, we know with the modern lifestyles, we're kind of like running on dominant masculine energy, which kind of explains, as you said, less feminine, lovely hormones which calm you down. We are most of the times in a sympathetic nervous system. And that's kind of like, uh, a lot of times we do meditations and, of course, all of that work, but our body also has such a beautiful role in the holistic healing. It's not just the body. And I think a lot of us kind of like get stuck to either doing the mindset or spiritual work or just doing the body work, where it's actually
Mm.
just everything is just so interconnected. So
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, like, it really, with the gut brain connection, it goes both ways. There are certain disorders, for instance, like IBS, um, which is like very much linked to anxiety. People with anxiety tend to have IBS. People with IBS tend to have anxiety. What is IBS? It's anxiety of the gut, essentially. So, it's, I mean, in one way, it's a chicken or an egg situation.
yeah.
Um, in the other sense, if you want to heal your IBS, you have to work on both, right? If you want to heal your anxiety, you can't just go to a psychologist to work on your anxiety or take anxiety medication. You need to figure out what's going on with your gut, because is that anxiety stemming from the gut? Is it the brain sympathizing with the gut, or is it the gut sympathizing with the brain?
Mm,
It could be some of both, and it could be a vicious
yes.
cycle. um, but you have to address them both in order
Mm,
to get true healing. And similarly, like with depression, is very much related to gut imbalances, a bacterial imbalance in the gut. um, and stress is very much related to acidity and, like, stomach disorders as well. And I think it's interesting because I was a couple of months ago doing like a gut healing reset, and part of that reset was to do deep belly breathing, and to do a self massage on your
gut
belly, and
massage,
to
yes.
take time to meditate as well as part of a gut healing protocol. So it was
Mm,
very, like, mind oriented. um and I found that, like, I had been experiencing, like, a bacterial disorder, like a bacterial imbalance, and I tried, like, many things to solve it. And it wasn't until I really incorporated some of these, and I was doing, I'd done all these crazy diets, but it wasn't until I was able to sort of incorporate some of these more mental things in as well that I found true healing from that. So,
yeah, and whatever you're saying, it's kind of like making so much sense, even to, from a very spiritual standpoint of view, also. Like,
mm,
our gut is the solar plexus chakra, and most of our shadows are found in the lowest three chakras: the root chakra, the sacral, which is where our reproductive organs are, and solar plexus is our gut. And these are the places where fear, shame, guilt kind of get stored. And
mm,
it just so beautifully ties in with what you just said, that of course anxiety roots from when you're ungrounded. Anxiety stems from unhealed trauma. Anxiety does stem
mm,
from when we have this fear and this lack of self-esteem, confidence, power, which is all such an extension of the solar plexus chakra energy. And when you have all of those places unhealed, be it physically, mentally, emotionally, because if it's manifesting in your physical, it is most likely coming from your spiritual, mental, emotional unhealing as well. So
Hmm.
yes, it all just ties so beautifully. Like, of course, as you said, it's that chicken and egg situation where you just don't know what's causing what, and just one way of healing does not work. So what
Hmm.
would you say to somebody who's just starting their gut healing journey, in a very physical way? How can they start making little shifts, or maybe perhaps they never knew about kombucha before and they're just starting out? Because I know it can just feel like, okay, where to start, how to start, and in full honesty, I'm also not a pro at that. I've had kombuchas and I've enjoyed them and I understand the value of them, but I've still not 100% dived deep into it. So
Hmm.
what would you really kind of like say to somebody who is just like, where do I begin?
Yeah, so I mean, there's lots of places to go. But I'll give you some practical tips, and then I'll tell you about like a few things that we have going on, that people can join as well. But when it comes to your gut, I think it's very individual. So if I tell you that I'm gluten free and that works for my gut, that doesn't mean that you need to go gluten free, for instance. There's no one size fits all. That's why it's complicated, but it's also beautiful in that way. And so, just start paying attention. If you feel sick, go back and say, okay, like today I feel bloated or I feel heavy. What have I eaten in the last 24 hours? Then notice the next time again, like what is it that I've eaten recently that I'm feeling this way? And then you might figure it out. It might be something obscure, like I think at one point I realized that I was allergic to brinjal. And it took me the longest time, and I would go home to my home in Missouri, and every time I went home, my cook there would make us bengan ka barta, and she made the best. And every time I was there, I would get sick. I would just feel like really bloated and really inflamed, and my skin would be patchy, and I was like, why does this happen every time I come home? And then one day I was like, I think one day I made brinjal at home, and I was like, it's the brinjal. Like I had no idea.
And I
And
think it's
so
interesting because I do follow an Ayurvedic diet as well, and even Ayurveda is not a fan of brinjal. Like my
yeah, yeah.
mom
I mean, so
loves them.
brinjal is it's a
Yeah,
night it's a nightshade, and
yeah.
which is a vegetable that can cause allergens for a lot of people, for a lot of different people. But again, it was something for me that was very obscure. But once I realized it, like you like I'll never eat brinjal, because it makes me feel so sick that even though I love it, like I used to really love it, like I just won't eat it anymore because like, and it's that's something that's very easy, it's like a very easy thing for me to avoid. So definitely starting to build that body consciousness, that body awareness in relation to food, and it can be even things like coffee or tea. Do you feel anxious and jittery after you have caffeine? Do you really need to have those things? Can you change them with something else? And then, for anyone who really wants to dive deeper, we do an atmosphere like every couple of months, we do a little gut reset, that people can sign up for. And essentially it's a little program where we kind of guide you through um, eliminating foods that a lot of people tend to be allergic to. So things like gluten, sugar, dairy, which are things that are more or less for most people not great for your gut. So we eliminate those things, and then we sort of go through a program where we eliminate different food groups to see, for people to just sort of gain an awareness of how different food groups are suiting them. Like I'll tell you, for me, like one example is like I love rice, and I'm not allergic to rice. Um, but if I eat a lot of rice on a daily basis, the way most people do, I start to puff out a little bit. And so, and so one thing I've realized for myself is like if I eliminate things like rice and grains from my diet, like I do tend to like, be more lean in my body, which isn't to say that I'll never eat them, but now I've sort of realized, okay, like if I if I eat this, then this is gonna happen. So maybe I can, instead of eating a large portion of rice, I can think of rice as like a dessert, so it's like I'll have it,
Mm,
maybe a couple of times a week, but I won't have it daily at every meal, for instance. Um,
mm,
so just kind of like getting like that better understanding of how different foods affect your body in the short term in terms of how you feel directly after them, and in the long term, do certain things like just like suddenly make you gain weight, do certain things make you lose weight, do certain things in the long run, help you sleep better, do certain things keep you awake at night, those kind of things. And so yeah, so we have a program. It's like I think it's like a 14-day program where we sort of lead people through a gut reset, and we talk about a lot of different foods. We talk about tactics. We give everyone a meal plan. We give everyone, all of the recipes that they need. And then we do the program together, and we all share our experiences. And so that's a great way to learn about gut health, especially if someone's if they know that there's a specific issue that they want to deal with and they haven't been able to find
mm,
like a proper solution to it. Yeah. And drinking
mm,
kombucha is great for everyone. It doesn't have to be so serious. We try to make kombucha that's tasty and easy to drink and easy to incorporate into your life. Good probiotics are helpful for just about everyone. So I would definitely recommend, anyone to make sure that they're getting probiotics on a regular basis. And kombucha is a good
mm,
source of that, but it's not the only source. There's also yogurt, there's kefir, there's sauerkraut, there's, pickles that are fermented, like they're actually fermented at home. All of these are a great
mm.
source of probiotics.
Beautiful, amazing. I mean, I swear I was at a coffee shop, I think last month or something, and I kind of like really, really avoid coffee because I have noticed to have like some serious anxiety. I was a coffee drinker back in college, but ever since I've realized like, okay, it's not working out. And so most of the times when I would end up at a coffee shop to work or something, I would have to like eat something. I literally had nothing to drink because it was a coffee shop. And just I was so glad to find a kombucha the other day, and I was like, oh, finally we have other beverages, we have something to kind of like
Mm,
just drink. And yes, it was just so calming and healing because most of the times I'm sitting in a coffee shop, it's just so much stimulation and then there's so much of
yeah,
coffee.
yeah.
And so, yeah, absolutely. I think we can just start it. I think uh, the program seems really exciting. So, for anybody who is kind of interested to start, I think this seems like a really good place to give it a go. And to kind of like start including these fun elements in our diets, in our everyday diets, and to experiment, I think. And I think what I really gathered from you when you spoke about it, it's like about intuitive eating. It's not about what a specific study says, what a teacher says, what somebody says. It's about you noticing in your body, you noticing in your everyday lifestyle, in your energy levels, and the way you feel. And that can only happen when you carve out the time and the space to connect to yourself, to know, okay, this food makes me feel good, this does not make me feel good. And if it does not making you
Mm,
feel good and you're still going after it, then perhaps I think a little bit of uh, self-reflection there can really, really help you to know,
mm,
okay, I know it's bad for me. How you said, like you love brinjals, but once you understood that it's not working out for you, you kind of did not feel that pull. But a lot of us, like if it's something, one of most often than not, like I know, um, for me it's that gooey creamy foods, the comfort food, which kind of like really attracts me. And in Ayurveda they say like attracts like. So I have like a lot more kapha in my body system and I kind of like crave that foods. But I just know now that I know better, it's not kind of like really the best choice for me. So
mm,
just, and also I think I read somewhere like a lot of us, when our guts are unhealed, we can really mix intuitive eating with unhealed gut because we feel like, oh, I feel I'm craving this, so I should have this. But
mm.
when your gut is unhealed, you can sometimes actually be craving things which are not actually good for you. Have you ever
Yeah, I
experienced?
mean, I think, yeah, that's why we do this gut reset program, because, and it's true, like, you know, in the beginning of the program, everyone just wants to eat sugar. Their body is craving sugar. Now, just because you're craving sugar doesn't mean you should be eating sugar, right? So I think a lot
Yes.
of times what happens in modern life is we have all of these foods that are overstimulating, that actually override our body's intrinsic craving for nutrition. Um, and so, which is why we do a gut reset, to sort of help us kind of like strip away those sugar cravings, those carb cravings, to get back to like what your body actually needs. Because when you stop eating a lot of sugar, you stop eating a lot of bread, you stop eating a lot of these very stimulating foods, you start craving, you know, things like pumpkin seeds or vegetables, you know, think cravings that you never knew that you had, which is your body telling you that it needs specific nutrients. Like
Mm-hmm.
a lot of women, for instance, crave chocolate, you know, like there's this whole, you know, period chocolate kind of connection. That's a magnesium craving. We, a lot, you know,
Yeah.
we in modern life, we have a lack of magnesium. And so, and chocolate contains magnesium. It's not chocolate we're craving, it's magnesium that we crave, you know. But, and you know, there's a reason for it.
Yeah, yeah. And most of the times, I think a lot of magnesium deficient kind of leads to headaches and anxiety, especially during or before or after your periods. And I think
Mm,
that kind of like explains where it's really coming from. But I just said
yeah,
yes. I absolutely enjoy this conversation so much, and I wish we could kind of like just go so much deeper. But I guess we'll probably do a future podcast on that. But
for
this was
sure.
so
Yeah.
insightful, Rebecca. This was just so beautiful to get to know you, your journey, and your medicine, which you're just sharing so beautifully with the world. So, where can people find you and all the beautiful work that you do?
Yeah, so you can find us on Instagram. Atmosphere.in, you know, is where I do my work. And our website is www.atmospherestudio.in. We do regular gut health programs, and we also have a blog where we have a lot of really interesting articles about gut health and different things that people might want to learn about. You can also find me personally on Instagram as Rebekah Himalayan. And yeah, I hope to hear from all of you.
Thank you
Thanks so
so
much,
much.
Shivani.
Thank you, Rebecca, so much for being here. And hopefully, we'll get to have many more exciting collaborations.
Yeah, absolutely.